make clear that Iran is the principal source of regional instability and terror. And we've been consistently clear that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon.
Only after everything falls apart, or not falls apart, only after the G7 finishes, does then Canada start to report on the fact that there is foreign interference between India and Canada. So that's kind of weird. I don't know why Mark Carney didn't actually present that to Modi's face. You know what I'm saying? Like, he waited for everyone to go their own ways, and then after he's like, hey, yeah, you know that guy that was here? Yeah, foreign interference. What? It's not me saying it. It's actually CTV. So right here on CTV, India is a perpetrator to foreign interference, Canadian intelligence says. Today at 9:30 in the morning, after Modi left, Carney was literally shaking hands with Modi. Carney was right there with Modi. Why did he not say, hey, Modi, just between you and I, have you guys been doing anything? Like, just so you know, we have investigations into this and something will come out. But no, they waited till after the meeting of the G7, after everyone went home. So that's kind of weird, a coward per se. India is a perpetrator of foreign interference, yet they didn't say anything right here when they were taking photos together. So what's up with that? Why is this the same song and dance as what Justin Trudeau did? Trudeau used to go and meet people, and everything was fine and dandy, and then immediately afterwards would start talking crap about the people that he just met. He did the same thing with Modi in India. So is this, like, did they talk about this when they shook hands? Did they talk about this when they were meeting? Or was this some sort of sabotage? I don't know, but let's take a look at the video.
And the G7 summit overall. I'm joined this morning by Robert Fefe, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
First of all, this relationship was so fractured. We have an RCMP investigation. We have accused them of foreign interference in 2 elections. What will Canada have to concede in order to fulfill this diplomatic goal of renewed ties and relationship with India?
Well, I don't know what Canada really has to do because from the Canadian perspective, we should be demanding that the Modi government cough up the Indian agents who were responsible for the hiring of hitmen to kill Hardeep Najjar in 2023. And it's not, India is not just implicated in that murder, it's implicated in other murders and extortion plots. So this is a very, very serious issue. And even on the day of the meeting with Mr. Modi, I got a hold of a CSIS report, annual report, which will actually be released today, that says very bluntly that India remains a persistent foreign interference threat to this country. It hires, it tries to influence the South Asian community. It is not adverse to trying to influence politicians or buy off politicians, as well as trying to strong arm tactics against members of the community. So the Prime Minister really does have a need to explain Canadians why he's doing this. I think you and I understand why he's doing this. We're trying to diversify trade away from the United States, and India is a huge market, and that's what he's trying to do. But, you know, it certainly upset many members of the South Asian community, particularly the Sikh community, who are very upset about this, but also people who are human rights activists.
And those groups in particular, the latter that you mentioned, are concerned of a blind eye being turned to what some of the things you've just mentioned. As an update for everybody, where does the current investigation stand right now?
Well, we really don't know. The RCMP have already charged 4 people. They're holding other investigations. We hear that the security people and the police are talking with Indian authorities about trying to get the culprits behind, the masterminds, if I say, behind this murder and other plots in Canada, but it looks like it's not going anywhere. The Americans also went after the Indians over an attempt to kill an American Canadian in the United States, but that plot was filed by the FBI. So, I mean, I guess the best we may get out of this is a commitment from the Modi government that they will stop this kind of transnational repression, where they use hired people or their own agents to carry out, threats or assassinations in particularly in democratic countries. I think that's the best we're going to hope to get out of this. And I think what you're seeing from Mr. Carney is that he's a practitioner of real politics. Yes, this is a very serious issue, what India has done, but Canada can't ignore the fact for geopolitical reasons and for trade reasons, we have to deal with this country. And certainly that, I think, is probably a relief to the business community, which had been wanting to see relations, as difficult as they were, try to be semi-restored so that we can get back to trying to open up that market for Canadian businesses.
This was a jam-packed summit, complicated further by escalations in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. Overall, Bob, what did Canada achieve? Where does this land us globally as we look to make new security?
Okay, so before we pivot onto the next point, I want to say something. If Canada is trying to expand trade outside of just America and tapping into the Indian market, then why are we still continuing these investigations into the India Hardeep Singh Nijjar thing? Like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to do trade with a country that you're saying has infiltrated our country, and the government or a third party successfully pulled off this assassination, then wouldn't that ruin chances of expanding trade with that country, with India? It seems kind of weird. And I feel like this is something that should have been discussed maybe privately between Mark Carney and Modi, but for this to hit the press the moment the G7 is done, saying, yeah, these guys that we're trying to make money with and trade, yeah, they killed someone in Canada illegally. Why? What's going on? I mean, is this smoke and mirrors? Is this to stir up domestic turmoil and hatred towards the country of India, which they're trying to expand trade with? Like, I'm not understanding the tactic behind this. It just seems weird. Maybe I'm an idiot. I probably am. Well, I definitely am an idiot, but to me, this doesn't make any sense.
Security and trade relationships. Where are we sitting?
Well, look, I think Prime Minister Carney, and I've been on a lot of these kind of summits, he handled himself very well. You could see the leaders had a great deal of respect for him. I mean, he's...
Well, except for this freeze frame right here, where at the beginning, reporters were only trying to speak to President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Mark Carney had to step in and say, excuse me, but as the chair of the G7, I say that we move on. So that was kind of weird. That was kind of funny. That was actually very funny, and that was probably the most humiliating moment that I've seen out of any prime minister. That was more humiliating than what Justin Trudeau had experienced. Because at least with Trudeau, whenever he'd get called a governor, he would like attempt to clap back. But what happened here, there was no clapbacks. Trump hijacked, not on his own. Like, reporters are the ones that were fueling this, right? Fueling the hijack. Reporters only wanted to speak to the president, and I don't blame them, because let's be honest, I personally only really wanted to hear Donald Trump speak. I didn't really care what Mark Carney had to say, or Macron, or whoever else was there. If I'm being totally honest, it didn't matter at all. Here in this part of the world, in most parts of the world, if you have an option between hearing your own leader or the president talk, chances are you're going to want to hear the president talk and what he has to say, because it's just more impactful. And the way that Carney got kind of usurped out of that position, right? And then Trump had to tap him on the elbow. It's okay, buddy. You can take control. You're the captain, of course. And then winks to him, right? Humiliating.
He's a serious guy. These G7 summits are not, all summits really are not moments where you're going to get major deals. But the fact of the matter is that they...
Well, that is actually not factual, because major deals did happen. Canada and UK, I believe, had a pretty big deal. Trump did say that a big deal between Canada and America will come forward in the next 30 days, all because of the G7. So again, unless I'm missing something, big deals do come forward when people like this, when world leaders meet in person rather than communicating through the back end channels like phone calls from office to office or social media posts. But deals don't get made on out in the public on social media posts, but interactions might occur potentially. So no, big deals do come out of the G7 or the G20, whatever the hell this was. There weren't just 7 countries that were there. Some of the photos that came from after when Trump left, there was like 20 people there. So is it really the G7 or is it turning into something else?
From Canada's perspective, the most important thing, and actually, is that he got along with President Trump. Even though the president left earlier, there wasn't any kind of a blow up that we saw in 2018 when he went after Prime Minister Trudeau. Mr. Carney's whole goal is to try to keep the president on side, because we have hugely important negotiations in the next 30 days to reach a trade deal. The leaders agreed they condemned Iran. They made agreements on critical minerals, on transnational repression, on AI, and those kinds of things. But these are just an opportunity, really, for the world, the democratic leaders of the world, to get together and talk about issues and to form issues that are of significant importance to the world, but also to bond amongst themselves, so that, you know, when a crisis happens, they can pick up the phone, they know the person personally, and sometimes personal relations can make a big difference.
Does it matter that President Trump, you know, one of the key figures in those diplomatic relations you were talking about, bounced early?
You know, probably from the view of Prime Minister Carney and the other leaders, it was probably a good thing, because yesterday was a day that would have probably set him off, because they were talking about Ukraine and Russia. And they were also talking about Iran. But you know, he's all over the map when it comes to Ukraine, and you could see him, and President Zelensky was there as well. So you could see him potentially flying off the handle and causing a big disturbance there. So I think they were probably...
No, I don't believe that at all. He has more pressing matters to attend. When you look at the grand scheme of things, the world police, it's not NATO, it's not the EU, it's America, the USA. The leader of the free world, the leader of the world right now is President Trump. Whether you'd like to hear that or not, that's the fact, is the United States dominates the world. Military, trade, everything. And the president staying at a first of all, he's always left a G7 meeting early. In this case, he's deploying more military than what everyone at the G7 has. So everything that President Trump has deployed to the Middle East is probably a little bit more than, well, it's definitely more than what Canada has. He's already, if he had to deploy all of Canada's military, it would be like half of what he's already put forward in and around Iran in the past 24 hours. So that speaks volume. So no, I'm sorry that the president left early and wasn't able to have wine and grapes with the rest of you guys, but he's got more pressing matters to attend. All right. There's some nuclear stuff going on, some stuff that shouldn't be going on, but it is going on. And we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out in the next 24, 40 hours. We're going to have more answers or be surprised to all hell. But no, I don't think that he certainly didn't leave because of anybody who was at the G7. Has nothing to do with that. And if Trump were to have met Zelensky again, I don't think he would have flown off the rails. Absolutely not. The president of the United States, since I'm blowing so much smoke up his ass, he was more patriotic for Canada than any other person, any other leader that was there at the G7, including Carney. He wore a pin that symbolizes America and Canada together. He wore a half American, half Canadian pin. It was beautiful. I don't think that any other leader wore a half their country, half Canadian pin. That speaks volume. A pin, something as simple as a pin, makes that big of a difference. The thought matters. And Trump just, aesthetically outplayed everybody.
Probably happy to see him go, although nobody will ever say that publicly.
That's why we have you here. Bob Fefe, Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail.
I don't know, man. I think the president had some more pressing matters, but that's my opinion. I would love to know your guys' opinion. Next up, we're going to take a look at Mark Carney's, I think, closing remarks at the G7. Here we go.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your coverage. Thanks for you at home. As I said, I guess yesterday morning, reminded that it was 50 years ago that the G7, or the advanced nations, leading advanced nations that became the G7, got together amidst economic upheaval, stagflation, conflict in the Middle East. Sounds familiar. And they formed what became the G7 with a mission, and when they met in Rambouillet, France, it wasn't a mission to preserve the old order, but to build a new one, one that could withstand shocks, deepen integration and cooperation, and really deliver prosperity for all citizens. And it's a reminder that nostalgia isn't a strategy. We have to change. And at this moment of transformation, we must turn the many challenges into change. We know there can't be security without economic prosperity, no true security without economic prosperity, but also no prosperity without resilience. We're in a world where shocks are flowing across borders, whether it's through climate change, whether it's through conflict, and we know that resilience is built through a combination of tough choices at home and smart cooperation with like-minded countries abroad. And that, in a small way, but building from that, is part of the objective of these meetings. This G7 is to begin to build that new era of cooperation, one that promotes long-term resilience over short-term efficiency. The past few days, Canada has worked with our G7 partners to determine where we can cooperate, build resilience and lasting prosperity. And that's the approach that Canada is taking as we negotiate a new economic and security partnership with the United States. And as I've stressed repeatedly, we will take all the time necessary to do that, but no more. And yesterday, President Trump and I agreed to continue to pursue those negotiations, intensify them towards a deal within the coming 30 days. And so the President and I, as well as our respective cabinet ministers and officials, will remain in close contact in the coming days to deliver on that timeline. Over the past days, also met with global leaders who will help determine what is success in the new global system that will emerge over time. And underpinning each of those discussions was, I stress, Canada's readiness to work to create new international partnerships to promote a world that's more secure, prosperous, just, and free. We're looking to deepen alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, our values, our principles, and who look to lead. We look to lead with many of the resources, including human resources and human capital, that the world wants and the values to which so many aspire. And it's those values of freedom, of democracy, and of justice that are behind Canada's unwavering support for a secure, a free, and sovereign Ukraine. And this morning, I shared with President Zelensky and G7 partners what Canada is doing, moving forward in multiple respects with measures to support Ukraine in its struggle in Russia's unjustified and barbaric war. With our international partners, we're launching a major new package of sanctions on individuals, on companies, on vessels, the Shadow Fleet, to exert maximum pressure on Russia. We're also sending over $2 billion in funding for drones, ammunition, armored vehicles to help Ukrainians defend their territory, as well as a $2.3 billion loan to help rebuild the infrastructure in that country. And take a moment to reiterate our condolences given the barbarism witnessed overnight in Kyiv caused by Russia. G7 leaders also reiterated our commitment to the pursuit of peace and stability in the Middle East. Made clear that Iran is the principal source of regional instability and terror. And we've been consistently clear that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We urge that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities, including a ceasefire in Gaza.
Okay. He lost me on the ceasefire part, but whatever. Diplomacy. I actually like the fact that he's reiterating what the President of the United States has been saying. Iran cannot have nuclear weapons, nuclear technology, aside from nuclear energy for the population, but that doesn't involve uranium. Once you start bringing in different components, it's no longer for energy, it's for kaboom. That is good to know that at least Canada is on the same page with the United States, because I've been posting content kind of recently about this, about the conflict, and how I believe that if America does proceed with doing something in the Middle East, which it seems like they are, Trump has deployed a lot of resources, the most amount of resources to the Middle East that we've seen in a very long time. That's not for negotiations. That's not for talks. That's because he obviously knows something that the rest of us don't know, even though Tulsi Gabbard swore under oath that Iran was years away from building a nuclear weapon. Obviously, he knows something that we don't. So the fact that our prime minister is on board with that, I mean, there's different takes. People are saying, I don't want to fight Israel's war, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't think it's Israel's war. It's about a Middle Eastern country having nuclear equipment that they are not allowed to have. If that happens, America's going to go to war, which it does seem like that's going to happen. And Canada will also be a player in this. So that's kind of good that we're on the same page as America. And I think this is the precursor right now. What he's doing right now is he's already trying to start to program people to realize that we are about to go to war. That's the messaging that I'm understanding. I'm reading between the lines. I'm seeing where this is going. And Canada is preparing to go to war. So that is what it is. Agree or disagree with that? There's certain countries that are just not allowed nuclear weapons. That's a fact.
I'm pleased to share that G7 nations in the past 2 days agreed to move forward in cooperation on several key priorities. We're going to work with our partners in the G7 and beyond, a number of the countries are here today, to develop critical metals and minerals in order to build independence from non-market economies. And to that end, we will create a critical minerals production alliance, a G7-led strategic initiative to stockpile and develop critical minerals needed for defense and technology, including a range from germanium, gallium, graphite, rare earths. We also struck several agreements, accords from the aforementioned critical mineral supply chains to adapting, powering, and sharing artificial intelligence, to collaborating on quantum technologies, to preventing, fighting, and recovering from wildfires, something we feel intensely, obviously, here in the prairies, tackling foreign interference and transnational repression, countering migrant smuggling by dismantling transnational organized crime. Next week, we will shift from addressing threats to economic security to addressing threats and addressing issues with respect to global defense and security at the NATO summit and at the Canada-EU summit. We recognize that our leadership will be defined not just by the strength of our values, but the value of our strength. And with that, why don't I take the opportunity?
There you go. There you go. okay, Canada is getting ready for war. That explains why Prime Minister Mark Carney has been putting in so much money, or committing so much money in his first months, basically, to our defense. That makes sense. It all checks out. I'm understanding it now. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Are you on board with Canada joining America in this fight against evil, or are you against it? Let me know your guys' thoughts. Just to add on to that, though, I think that if Canada does actually participate in the war, as patriots, we owe it to ourselves to remain patriotic, to defend our sovereignty, and to promote the fact that Western society must stay Western. And there's a big push and pull happening in the world right now. And I've said this before, you can go back and you can quote me or whatever, but I do believe that in the next 50 to 100 years, you're going to see two outcomes. The world will either be more Western than what it is now, so American dominance, or Sharia law. So do you, your kids, or your grandkids want to live under Western values, or do you want to live under Sharia law? Keep that in mind. Keep that very much in mind. For me, the answer is clear. Western dominance. So there you go. I've said it.